Welcome back or welcome to our channel. Here on this channel, we post videos on ministry, missions, and motherhood. And one of my goals, I guess, to try to keep my sanity as a mom and as a pastor's wife was to read a book a month. And so this year I have had that challenge for myself. And although I have not posted all of my book review updates, I am on track. So I wanted to take a moment and give you guys a little bit of an update on where I am with my reading. So last time I gave you an update, I was a book behind. And I have officially caught up. So I did the book that I was behind, my June book, and my July book. So I made it. I'm all set. And as I'm filming this video, there's still 2 weeks left in August. And I'm still trying to figure out what book to read. And I'll tell you why I'm struggling with that at the end of this video. And maybe you guys can help me out. But I wanted to tell you guys about these 3 books that I've read in the past couple months. So the first one I'm going to tell you about is one that I'm just going to say it right off the bat. I don't recommend it. One of our kids in ministry gave me this book for Mother's Day, so in like May. And honestly, that's the only reason I finished it, was because it was a gift from one of our kiddos. I don't recommend it. It was so hard to get through because it was very choppily written, I guess, if that's a word. But it would like go back and forth from storyline, and then it would have like a quote from one of the athletes, and then jump into context, and then quote, and then historical context. And then they had sidebars at the ends of each chapter that covered events from other athletes, and it was just really hard to follow. For example, I marked something. So in one of the sidebars at the end of a chapter, so this book was on Jackie, who was an incredible Olympian, runner, jumper, basketball player, and her life. And normally I really like biographies and I love inspiring stories, but this one was just really hard to follow. And part of it was that it weaved in some like tidbits from other athletes, and it just jumped around a lot. For instance, in one of the sidebars, on page 85, it said Florence, which is her sister-in-law, Florence died in 1998. 2 pages later, in the actual story, so this is what I'm saying, it like jumps. In the actual story, it's now 1988, so 10 years earlier, and Florence put on a great performance and won a medal. And so I was like, wait, but they just said she died and now she won a medal. And so it just was really hard. And then, like I said, it just jumped between like a commentary or a quote to story. And so that was just really difficult. So, but I did read it so that when that kiddo asks me, I can tell them about this book and thank them for it. It was a very sweet gesture. I don't know if they bought it here in Colombia, and if that is why it was a harder read, if it was translated, I don't know, but not an easy like grammatical or story structure to follow. The other 2 books that I read, I absolutely loved. This one was by the author from the last book review that I did. I'll put that link up here. But this one is called Church Plus Home by Mark Holman. And this was more of like, the idea of this series that he has is how to bring faith into the home. And what I loved about this one specifically is it gave great ideas for the local church. So one of the examples that I always tell people about when I recommend this book to them, because I've recommended this book about 4 times in the past couple months, but one of these stories that I always tell them about is there was a church and they gave out Bibles to all of their 3rd graders every single year. And that's a great thing. But they realized that it wasn't bringing faith into the home. It wasn't causing a ripple effect and causing those kids to actually read their Bible. So they wanted to find a way to actually get the kids to pick up their Bibles and read them, not just give them a Bible to put on a bookshelf. And the way that they did that was just inspiring. And it showed me like that one example of how they took something that the church was already doing and gave it a faith at home focus, showed me that we can take the things that we're already doing in our church and make them more purposeful to really impact the kids and the youth for Christ. So it just had a lot of great practical suggestions. Do you want to read that book? Okay, you sit down and read it. ELIANA has been loving reading. For instance, I actually pulled out all of the books. Too bad these books don't count towards my total. These are all of the books that ELIANA and I read yesterday From cover to cover, she let me read books. Normally she wants to flip through the pages and doesn't let me read. But she let me read all of these books. Hush Little Polar Bear, the Going to Bed book. This one is super cute. I will put a link to it below. It's to the tune of Hush Little Baby, but it's Hush Little Polar Bear. Super cute. Do you like that book? Okay, here, you sit down and you read it. Mommy loves when you read to Mommy. Would you read it? And then some Berenstein Bears books, which, again, she let me read. And these have a lot of words, but she let me read them from cover to cover. And the last one was A Three Billy Goats Gruff in English and Spanish. I read it in English, but there's that one. Too bad, like I said, they don't count towards my total. You love to show the books on camera? Someday, Miss Eliana, you can do book reviews and tell us all of the books that you love. Will we do an Eliana channel of Eliana's favorites? Okay, the last book that caught me up, I am on track. I have read 7 books this year. I cannot believe it. And I actually read this one in Spanish. I think this is the first book that I have read from cover to cover in Spanish. And it was because my husband needed to read it for a class, but it had a lot of great application as church leadership, and so we read it together. It's called Spiritual Leadership by Henry and Richard Blackaby. I will put a picture of the actual title in English up here, just in case the title changes a bit in Spanish. But what I loved is that this gave, again, really practical things for pastors to put into practice, or church leaders as leadership. It talked about how God builds leadership in us, how he trains up a leader. It talked about some of the things that God uses to prepare us as leaders, life experiences, even our failures, our abilities. So it talked about all sorts of different aspects of forming a leader or being a good leader, and how to not just be a Christian leader, but to be a spiritual leader. But I loved the definition, and this kind of tells you what this book is all about. I'm going to translate it on the fly. The definition they have of a spiritual leader is that spiritual leadership moves people to God's plans. So the whole idea of this book is that as a spiritual leader, my job is to help people complete the plans that God has for them. And it just takes you on a journey as a leader of how you do that. How do you inspire work ethic? How do you inspire your people to follow? And how do you really urge them to complete the calling that God has placed, or the plan that God has in their life? And so it was a really good book. If you work in a church, or if you are part of a leadership team, if you're part of leadership, or even if you're submitting to a leader, I think it would be good. But especially for those that lead in some way, I would highly, highly recommend this book. Now, the thing that I said I needed your help with. So I'm about halfway through August, and I don't know what book to read for August. Because I think you've probably seen, as this year has gone on, a lot of my books are leadership books and Christian faith books and the Christian walk, and they're great and I love them, and I'm not saying that's a bad genre, but I'm kind of all of that genre'd out. So I wanted to find a fiction book, or an inspiring biography, or even a missionary biography, or a fiction that's not romance. I'm not a huge romance fan, but something, it doesn't necessarily have to be Christian, but it does have to be clean. Historical fiction, I don't know. So if you guys have any suggestions for something that's outside of kind of this norm of the books that I've been reading, please put a comment down below. Let me know. If you look at my shelf, I'm going to show you guys. They're all Christian walk and parenting. I have a lot of parenting books as well. But being a servant of God, Victory Over the Darkness would be more of religious fiction, I believe. Teach Me to Study the Bible, Draw a Circle, The Circle Maker, which is all on prayer, 5 Love Language, Shepherding a Child's Heart. So I have a lot of I guess you'd put them in the self-help category, even though I don't really love that terminology. But with all that being said, I need some suggestions. So help me out in the comments below. I would really, really appreciate it. But I will put links to all of these books down below, except for this one because I don't recommend it. But give me your suggestions. If you want to see some of my other book reviews, I will put a link over here. And if you guys want to follow us as missionaries, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. And we will see you on the next one.